Guten Abend, Freunde, und willkommen in der Geeks with Vibes Podcast. Ich bin Ihr Gastgeber in diesen Abend und für mich ist Ian.
Hi.
Turn the switch off, guys. Put the German switch on.
Oh, the translator switch. All right, I found it. All right. Well, welcome, friends, to the Geeks with Wives podcast, episode 137. Joining me this evening, I'm your host, Kenny. Joining me this evening is Ian.
Hi.
And Jeff.
Hello.
And Grant.
Hi.
Those are some.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
We've done this before.
Everyone feels very welcome. And so I'm sorry. I apologize for leading off in German today. I've been enjoying my time in Wolfenstein: The New Order, and the topic of the week is going to be alternate histories. So I felt like it was a pretty good way to start off the show. But before we get into alternate histories and the topic of the week, I'd like to discuss what we're playing. And since I'm the host, I get to go last. And so I'm going to pick Jeff. Jeff, what are you playing? You picked up some pretty cool stuff. I saw that on Twitter lately.
Yeah, so I just picked up the PlayStation Vita Borderlands 2 bundle a couple of weeks ago. And so if you don't know anything about that, you got the PlayStation Slim that comes in that now. And they were selling that in Japan only, and so now they brought it over to North America, and I really enjoyed it. I hadn't owned a Vita before, so it wasn't like I upgraded or downgraded, however you want to look at it, to the Vita Slim. This is my first experience with the Vita, and so I really like it. I've been playing Killzone Mercenary, and I really like it because it's finally a good first-person shooter that's on the Vita. And we've talked about this before, that it's not really a handheld console that's really designed to play first-person shooters. You have the dual sticks, but it's not really designed for first-person shooters. But I feel like they did a great job in putting that first-person shooter experience that's very similar to like Killzone 3.
Wait, what are you talking about? Borderlands 2 ended up great, didn't it?
Borderlands 2?
Yeah.
That's what caught my attention, is you said I picked up the Borderlands 2 bundle and I played Killzone Mercenaries, and there's finally a good first-person shooter on the PlayStation Vita. So
yeah.
What I'm curious, and I think Grant's hinting at, is...
Did you play it?
Yes,
you
yeah,
got
I
the
did
bundle,
play it.
So what do you think?
Yeah, and so I was going to get to that. It's very much a contrast from each other, because what makes Killzone so great is that there's not a whole lot of lag. They do a really good job of maintaining like a close to 30 frames per second. But with Borderlands 2, there's definitely a lot of lag. And I experienced that from like the very beginning, from when I started playing it. There'd just be parts where it was really choppy. And,
so you're talking about frame rate lag, not like network play. Okay.
Yeah, and so, with a game like Borderlands 2, where there's times where you have like a whole lot of enemies coming at you, and you go and you shoot at a guy, and he's no longer there, and he's like, 5 feet closer to you, and you didn't hit him. It's just really frustrating. So, I'm going to give it another try. But there were just some games that I've heard people talk about, and I really wanted to play those before I really dove into Borderlands 2. But yeah, so far it's not looking too good for Borderlands 2. But
did it come with a physical copy or a digital copy?
It's a digital. So I downloaded it, and it took like 2 hours to download. It took a while, but once it was there, I mean, it's on my Vita. It's waiting to be played. Or waiting to be played more. But
What would make the Vita more of a better first-person shooter product? Like, I don't get it. What you say, it's not quite, but it is. I mean, doesn't a first-person shooter need like trigger sticks and 2 joysticks?
I think that like a trigger adapter would be awesome. That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that what the real missing part is? The trigger?
I think
For
so.
me,
Yeah.
For me, it's the smaller axis of the sticks, in my opinion, and the calibration that goes into play there. It feels sometimes it feels like it's too quick, but when you really need a drastic turn, for example, if you're turning in a 180-degree motion, then it feels like it's too slow. I didn't feel like it was a very good example of a twitch shooting controller. More importantly, also, at least I have the original Vita. I guess it's called the Vita 1000 now, and my fat, long American fingers keep touching the rear touchpad, and that's a problem as well. I think, and I'll let Jeff say his piece here in a second, but I think we were talking a little about this before the show, and I was telling him I feel like the console is is kind of a jack of all trades in that regard, in that it can play first-person shooters, but the experiences that I've enjoyed the most on a console have not been first-person shooters.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely have to agree with the sticks. They're definitely not very conducive to playing a first-person shooter, and in fact, I had to adjust the sensitivity to make it a lot more sensitive than I usually have it on other first-person shooters. I mean, I got used to it because you play something for an hour or two, you get used to it. But yeah, I think the combination of the sticks and not being able to have a trigger, and the fact that the button layout is so similar to what you have on a PlayStation controller, there's just a real big disconnect there. And I feel like I should be able to press the trigger, but I'm not able to. So maybe that's just something I may get used to, but y'all have Vitas, and it sounds like you haven't been able to get used to that experience, so maybe it's not too hopeful for me either.
Ian, do you have experience with first-person shooters on the Vita? What has your experience been, if so?
So I played a little bit of one. The problem for me is I've never been that much of a first-person shooter guy. Like, I played Halo, and I've given about an hour each to every one of the shooters that goes across my desk, but I don't really get into them that much. Partially just because my I don't know, maybe my personality doesn't mesh with them. Although I did play BioShock Infinite all the way through, so there's one game that got me, but. As we've established on this podcast before, I'm more of a story guy than a gameplay type guy. So the Vita definitely, I feel like, with the buttons and the way it is, that it doesn't, I mean, it's definitely not as refined as the PlayStation controller on its own. So I can understand that frustration. But, I think more than anything, what's hard for me to understand is I don't entirely understand the whole Twitch motion type stuff. Like, I'm really bad at first-person shooters, frankly, and if I were to play in a competition, I would lose very quickly. So that's why I asked you guys, like, what makes a difference? Because I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough, frankly, to know what would separate a successful shooter game on the Vita and an unsuccessful game on the Vita, except for while I'm playing it, I'm thinking this doesn't exactly feel right.
Yeah.
So, okay, first-person shooters on the Vita, total toss-up here. But you enjoyed Killzone Mercenary. You're playing that. So how was that?
No, I really like it. And once again, it's very similar to Killzone 3. So if you haven't played that before, or if you have played it before, it carries over quite nicely. I mean, Ian, like you talk about, like the story aspect of games are really appealing to you. I'm the same way. And so if you play Killzone Mercenary, it's definitely not going to be for the story. It's just, to have a new experience on a handheld.
Wait, you're saying a mobile game doesn't have that much story to it? I'm shocked.
Yeah, so, for me, it wasn't appealing in that aspect, but I definitely enjoyed just a new way of playing a first-person shooter. So I think that they should be commended for having a game that carries over so well on a handheld. And
I think that the reason Killzone Mercenary plays better than, say, Borderlands is it was designed with that control scheme in mind, and they did that really well. It felt to me like it was paced better for being a little more sluggish with your movements and stuff. Like when you melee, it pauses the game almost. You swipe the screen.
Yeah.
And Borderlands just doesn't have that, right? There's so much going on in Borderlands, and that's kind of Borderlands' thing is there's a ton of enemies, a ton of loot, and yeah, so.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah,
does
and
that mean
Borderlands 2,
does
sometimes
that,
I'm like doing a melee attack when I don't want to, because it's like if you press the screen just a little bit, like the guy throws his hands up in the air. So
Yeah.
sorry, Ian, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, it's okay. I was curious. Does that mean that like Vita Remote Play doesn't work well with a lot of games that are not refined for the
Vita
Vita?
Remote Play barely works for anything for me. First of all, like Don't Starve, there is no button to bring up the map. They didn't program in a button for the Vita to.
That's troublesome.
Yeah, a little bit.
There are some
and
games that do it better than others. Like for example, Assassin's Creed 4, in my opinion, works quite well. Child of Light works well. Non-complex games, and I know I just said Assassin's Creed 4, but Assassin's Creed 4 was kind of one of the front runners of I think remote play. At least that was the one that I saw the most of. That and maybe what was it, Need for Speed, but
Assassin's Creed is kind of a 6-button game. So I mean, it works really well that way, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But I think that remote play has a lot of refining to do. Like Grant said, missing buttons on Don't Starve, and also, and more importantly, Don't Starve, I didn't even get to the missing button section because I couldn't even read the text. It didn't scale for the Vita screen.
Oh, that's a problem. Wow.
Yeah.
So.
Pretty
Well, very good, very good. Well, maybe we can get off the subject of handhelds. I don't imagine Grant's been playing too many handhelds, but what have you been playing, Grant?
Aside from the regular Diablo, I have been slowly working my way through the original Fear, which I don't know if you guys played it, but
great game.
Even now, that game is amazing. The controls feel awesome. I'm playing on PC. I have no idea how the console controls, but it looks great. It doesn't run natively in 1080p, but you can force it, and it says, "Oh, it's not supported," but it looks fantastic. And like the only like downside I can see is that during checkpoints, like the screen blacks out and then pops back in. So it's really no big deal. That's awesome.
I held up my copy of Fear right there. I tell you what, that game made me play with the lights on sometimes. That has a very creepy setting, and you know, sometimes they're just cheap jumps, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Fear. I never played the Fears, the middle Fears, or the end Fears. Just the beginning Fears.
What's surprising to me is that there have been surprisingly few like jump scares. They rely almost all on like a creepy atmosphere, and this like I don't know anything about her yet, but she's this creepy like demon chick that pops up and like slowly like watches you, and it's very creepy. I wouldn't say scary, just very creepy.
Okay, so this title came out what, in 2005?
Sure.
So if you haven't played it, spoilers. But there's this one section in the beginning of the game.
I haven't played it. I'm not done with it yet.
I know where you are. I played the game a lot. Okay, so there's a point in the game in the early section of the game where you go into a sewer and you have to like climb down a ladder, and quit searching. It's there.
What?
I see your eyes. Your eyes are just like looking around. Like,
no, I'm trying to think.
Trying
to think about where you are. Yeah. Okay, keep going.
And you go to climb down the ladder, and of course it's all done in first person. And that was one of the other things I liked about Fear, was that you never left the body. You were in body the whole time. You saw your arms and legs.
Half-Life.
Yeah. And so anyway, so you go to grab the ladder and you turn around, and right behind you is creepy Alma. And I mean, just total jump. And then you come down the ladder, and you expect to see her behind you, and she's not there. And you look down this corridor, and again, you're in a sewer. And as you're walking, all of a sudden, she just like flashes across the screen. I don't know. It got me a couple times. I'm just saying, got me a couple times.
There's been a couple. There has been a couple, but yeah, it's more the creepiness to me. And oh my god, that game is bloody. Like, multiple times, like 5 times so far, I think. I'm like 4 or 5 hours into the game. Multiple times I've walked into a room, and the whole room is just covered in blood. and just blood dripping from the ceiling, and it is crazy. I like it a lot though.
It's definitely a worthwhile play. It's probably free or cheap or whatever
I think
now.
it's free.
I'm sure there are means. Just email Grant. He'll let you borrow his copy. So, all right. So Grant's playing Fear and some Diablo. Ian, what are you playing?
So I haven't played much. I've given Hearthstone a try finally, which I'm way behind the curve on that game. But I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I thought I'm enjoying it more than I thought I would. I think I haven't
literally,
played
like verbatim, what every person I've ever talked to about Hearthstone says. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. And
yeah,
makes me
well,
not
because
want to try it.
okay,
I don't
look,
want to enjoy it.
I when I was a kid, I'm dating myself a little bit here now, but I played Magic the Gathering, and there was
you're
a
not dating
reason
yourself at all.
well, and the reason I got out of it was because eventually I just get tired of it, right?
Mhm.
And there isn't that much changes, and eventually you realize that it's really a game for rich kids who can afford the really good cards.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, done with that. So I walked into this expecting something similar, and I've been enjoying it. Like I said, I think that one of the struggles I've had is I'm not playing it on PC, I'm playing it on my iPad mini, and the game is very crashy on the iPad mini because my device is running, it's already a year and a half old or something, and they didn't optimize or whatever. So it sucks because you'll get to the end of a match and you'll win or lose, and then the game just crashes. But it remembers that you won or lost. Thank God. So so it's kind of like you play for 20 minutes, crash. Play for 20 minutes, crash. So it's not the best experience there. And then I'm also looking forward to. I'm going to try out Mario probably sometime soon. Mario Kart 8.
Nice.
Which should be rather fun, I imagine. I remember playing some of the demos last E3, and they looked really fun. So, and I've been reading the reviews from everywhere, and the reviews have been stellar. The real question I have, of course, is so was Mario 3D World, and that didn't end up helping Nintendo very much.
Right.
So I'm curious if this game is going to be. I mean, already people are saying this is the must-have game for the Wii U, which is exactly what I heard, 6 months ago when Mario came out. So I'm curious whether or not this is going to actually move the needle or not. But it looks like a really fun game either way.
It's Mario Kart.
Yeah, exactly.
And see, that's the thing is I don't know. There are times, like for example, okay, I'll admit it. For the 3DS, I never completed. Is it Super Mario 3D Land? Correct?
Yes.
I never completed that.
Which I did complete, by the way. I didn't play the second set of. So once you win the game and you have to go through again, I didn't do any of that because I lost my patience. But I went through the whole way the first time.
Well, I've heard that second go around makes things a lot more difficult, a little bit more.
Oh my God, it's so much more difficult.
Yeah, and see, I love old school Mario and I like Mario, but it just Super Mario 3D Land just did not keep my interest. I think I maybe got to like the second world or whatever, and I mean I still have it. I just don't know if I'll ever go back to it. But Mario Kart, on the other hand, is kind of cool because you can pick it up, you can run a race, you can put it down. Couch co-op with your friends, Mario Kart, it's great. Now, one thing that concerns me is they're revamped. And I usually use the term revamped is to denote an improvement. Battle mode. I liked the arenas of the old school Mario Kart games, and apparently the new battle mode is basically just smaller, shorter track segments. Still a loop, but you still got your balloons. But the point is basically you're just using they're using similar assets in terms of track layouts. So I don't know if you guys had heard that yet.
I'd heard it. I don't know how well it's going to be. I mean, it's not sitting in my desk yet, so we'll see. But the thing is that typically I found that Mario Kart overwhelmingly tends to be like a game. I mean, if you like Mario Kart, you're going to continue liking Mario Kart, and if you don't like Mario Kart, or if you're on the fence, you're not going to like it. And that's because they don't really do that much to change it. I mean, the anti-grav stuff is cool, but and it reminds me of my personal favorite in the series is Diddy Kong Racing, which I know is not most liked by most people, but I loved it because you could fly, which I thought was a great different type of challenge. But anyway,
I love Diddy Kong Racing.
I thought it was great.
I enjoyed it as well. And now that you mention it, I think I loaned it to someone. I never got it back. I'll have to call that guy.
Throw a red turtle shell at him.
I should. So speaking of Mario Kart and speaking of actually throwing a red turtle shell at someone in real life, I don't know if you guys heard, but a while back I actually this is relevant. I was driving to my my organization's headquarters, which is about a 45-minute drive for me, and I was driving on the highway, 65 miles an hour or so, 70 miles an hour, and this guy throws a banana peel out of his window, and he's in front of me. I talked about it in my final thoughts a couple episodes ago, and I think it's pertinent right now. So yeah. This guy is really ready for Mario Kart. So Guy, if you're listening, all right, I made it safe and sound. All my balloons are intact, sucker.
What would be worse is if he slipped on his own turtle shell or on his own banana peel on the way back.
Yeah, I don't know how that would have worked.
Well, that's the worst part is when you're coming back and you slip on your own banana.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, damn me from the past, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I did see his car flipped over in a ditch. No, but that was funny.
To pick him up and gather him back. Okay,
yeah, we have been having some terrible storms lately in the Midwest. Tornado just rights him onto the highway. So very good. Well, yeah, I'm excited for Mario Kart 8, which is problematic for me because I don't own a Wii U. But I guess that's my 2 seconds of hating on Nintendo, right? I think that's what I've become famous for. I don't understand how, but anyways.
I thought you were famous for not being fun.
I am. My name is Kenny, and I don't like fun, which is surprising because I picked up Wolfenstein: The New Order today, and it's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying it. And so maybe my name is Kenny, and I kind of like fun sometimes.
But only when you're killing Nazis.
Only when I'm killing Nazis. I did totally watch Inglourious Bastards to gear up for this. And let me tell you, I was totally stoked. Although the historian in me then immediately started the movie Downfall, which is very good, by the way. I'd recommend it.
I like the Google joke, the YouTube video jokes more than I like the movie.
Well, of course.
Although I did watch it. I put the time in. I watched that movie.
Actually, Jeff, was it you that commented? I did post one. Ian, you should go back and take a look at it. There's actually one that someone did about Wolfenstein 3D.
Really?
And it's Hitler yelling about how B.J. Blazkowicz stole all his gold and 100% secrets found.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, you should definitely look that up. It's worth your time. So the funny thing is I've been taking notes as you guys have been talking, and so Jeff, we talked about the Vita not being good for first-person shooters, at least in your opinion, and in my opinion, in some regards, because of the sensitivity of the sticks. And you said something about adjusting the sensitivity. Well, let me tell you what. Wolfenstein has no adjusted sensitivity, right? There are swastikas everywhere. There are Germans speaking German and Nazis that are evil people. And let me tell you,
would it be Wolfenstein without that? Like, what would it be if it weren't? What would they wear?
Well, but the thing is one thing that I did was I did end up picking up to kind of get into the mix. I did not actually pick up 2009's Wolfenstein. I have not played that version, but I was tempted to pick up Sniper Elite V2, and I did so last week at the end of the week, and I was playing it over the weekend. It's a very fun game for a very short while, in my opinion. I think it gets stale, but I noticed that virtually everybody I'm killing, and for no apparent reason, is all Wehrmachts, and they're all just like regular German soldiers, and I could totally sneak past them. I mean, they're just like hanging out over there, but I've got to shoot them in the face or vital organs, and I was like, at the end of the day, as a history graduate, I'm thinking to myself, I mean, the average German infantryman was no different, really, in terms of character or moral standards of any other person that was fighting for any other armed forces at the time. And, quite honestly, there were probably even some Nazis who were just towing the party line, if you will. and weren't necessarily buying into this whole extermination Holocaust thing. But Wolfenstein isn't about that, all right? Every one of these SOBs is personally responsible for everything, and that's why it's so fun to just take them all out. And so, one thing I'd like to point out though is there have been fairly positive reviews about this game. One of the biggest complaints that I saw though from a reputable site was talking about its gunplay was kind of boring. It never did anything new. And in my opinion, I feel like it's fun. I feel like it does everything right. It doesn't need to do something new to be exciting and worth your time. It just needs to do it right. The one thing that it does really right though, Ian, and you talked about how you're not a first-person shooter fan, but you enjoyed BioShock Infinite for its story, is it really characterizes BJ Blazkowicz, and it does a good job of fleshing out other characters so far in the title. I feel like the story is worth the play. Now, is it something you want to sit down and gather the kids and family around for? Absolutely not. Unless you're interested in exposing them to bloody chunks of Nazis. And just Nazis in general. I wouldn't
Do any of
recommend
them shout Ach mein Lieber?
Not yet, but I am totally looking for that. Or any of the
or Stop Dog, or what were some of the other ones that are? It's surprising what I've forgotten over the last few years.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, there's debate over what they're actually saying because, again, the track was so, elementary at the time, I guess, crude. There are some, mein Leben, that's obviously one of them. And then my favorite, though, would be, is it Hans Grosse, the big fat guy with the two machine guns, and he opens the door and he's like, Guten Tag, and starts firing at you. That's the best line of the series. But anyways, I'm looking for that. There are some throwbacks already. I saw somebody post on Twitter. There are segments of the game that you can find to enter the original Wolfenstein 3D game, and all around, I feel like it's a good jaunt through an alternate scary history. And speaking of alternate histories, that is the topic of the week, and perhaps that is in celebration of the release of Wolfenstein: The New Order. And so what I'd like to ask you guys is what, in your opinion, we could talk about, again, literature, movies, video games, what alternate histories have really grabbed you and made you ponder or made you maybe even happy that they didn't happen? So I'll just go ahead and throw that out and just let anybody attack it.
Maybe like Back to the Future 2. I'm glad that didn't happen, because then like once you reach the year 2000, you're like moving backwards than what we've actually come to. I don't know. Although no hoverboard, right? Yeah, I don't know.
No hoverboard. That's definitely a negative. Somebody should get on that. Grant, can you get on that?
Yeah. So are we, in that instance, are we the alternate history?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Somebody's an alternate history, but if we have their alternate history, that doesn't turn out too well for us, because we're still dressing like it's in the 80s, and we're actually moving back technology-wise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Deep.
So the only thing I can even think of is it wasn't that bad, but Homefront, just as a game, wasn't that interesting. But the setting and stuff sure was, and I actually did like the story with the whole North Korea, South Korea getting reunited and all that crap, invading and occupying the United States, and it was just really, I don't know, scary, I guess.
So you said it wasn't that good of a game. What price point would you recommend people pick it up at? If you're
really
just an average gamer.
I don't know. It's not really a must-play at all, but I mean, I don't know, $10, $5 used.
haven't played it. It actually came out when I was living in South Korea.
Right.
And it was banned. Um, so I'm not really sure why though, since South Korea is fairly they don't usually care about that type of stuff. But I'm curious to know, as an alternate history, how did North and South Korea unite in that game? Do you remember?
Well, Kim Jong-il did not die, or did he not die? I can't remember. One of them from that family reunited the two nations and built up a giant army. And I don't know how close it is to like, oh, that actually could have happened. I have no idea.
Well, as someone who lived there and as a history graduate, I must admit that I cannot see that happening without some sort of military conflict, even if it was simply because of the troops that we have stationed there and our interest in
Right.
the area.
Yeah.
But that being said, usually North Korea is pitied in South Korea, and their leaders are mocked ruthlessly. So I really couldn't see. I'm just curious how it handled it. I thought about picking up the game simply for that reason alone. But anyways,
you would probably just be laughing at the even idea that it could happen then.
Well, I guess it's similar to the remake of Red Dawn that recently came out, and I did pick that up on Netflix. Well, I didn't pick it up; I paid for Netflix, but I watched it a couple weeks ago, and I did have to kind of laugh a little bit. Number one, because it's no substitute for the original Red Dawn, but number two, because of the premise of a unified Korea invading the western portion of the United States.
Right.
Well, I'd like to plug one of my favorite time travel movies of all time, which was called Primer. Did any of you guys see that? No,
I have
New Line
not.
Cinema. A lot of people never saw it because it had like no marketing budget and they spent very little money making it. But it's basically about these two dudes who accidentally stumble upon time travel, and they can only travel back in time to the period at which they turn the machine on. So you turn on the machine, you go forward with your day, you get in the machine, you show up back in the past when you turned it on. And what they do is that they initially use it to play the stock market, but then it becomes more than that. And it's a rather amazing movie. It also really screws with your head. You have to watch it 2 or 3 times. And Google, actually, on Wikipedia, there is this massive like time chart to explain the movie to you once you've watched it.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because you only
I was just about to say, if you're confused by anything Ian said, then go to Wikipedia.
No, Wikipedia
simple.
page is going to make you even more confused. And the best part is that, according to that Wikipedia page, you've only seen like half of what's actually going on. So in the movie, like they only show you half of it, but it's a rather amazing film, and it really plays with you. And at the end, you're like, whoa! And it really gets to the, how do human beings screw up something so cool as time machines? That is a great way to show how they could, and a lot more realistic than, let's say, Doctor Who.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, you were talking about a low budget. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, it was a $7,000 budget.
Oh my God!
It was rather amazing. But New Line Cinema, because they love to pick up these underdogs, they picked it up and ran with it, and I think it did really well at the box office compared to what it cost to make.
$424,000.
Yeah, there you go. That's quite an ROI, if you ask me.
Just a little.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was a really good movie. So I'm a big fan of it.
So you know what that tells me? What that tells me is, guys, we should make a movie. At that rate, even if we did a budget of $3,500, we'd still make $250,000, right? So
yes, there's a guarantee that the amount of money you throw into it will automatically quadruple and all that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a math guy, and maybe that's apparent right now, but Wikipedia is telling me that, so I'm inclined to believe it, because there's checks for this stuff, Ian. The internet is so monitored now that you can believe everything. In a lot of ways, the internet is an alternate history. Well, I suppose my favorite, and maybe this is a little bit of a cop-out, but again, I fought for this last year. So I think some of my favorite alternate histories would have to be the BioShock series. And I throw them out there because, yeah, sure, they're video games, but I feel like they'd make good movies too. The ideas that are presented in them, I feel, are very tangible ideas, in that there have been people in real life that have left society to create their own cultural and moral norms in whatever capacity they could, and so I feel like those stories, with the exception of some of the supernatural elements, of course, they could have actually played out. And to be perfectly fair, we've explored almost every part of this Earth except for the undersea portion. There very well may be a rapture. Just throwing that out there. Yeah.
Let's go. I want to go.
I don't know, man. If they've been like stewing in splicers since the 1960s, I don't know if I'd want to go there.
Yeah. I think I have to agree with you about BioShock. And I think one of the things that fascinates me about it, when you talk about anything with alternate history, is when you think of, man, it would be so cool if that actually happened. But the reality is when you play BioShock, like, Rapture is terrifying. So it's like, it's as amazing as it is, it's also just like this,
Well, it's told
hell.
in a way that's going to create an interesting story and, gameplay elements where you're fighting things and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's still the potential for that could have been a cool idea.
Yeah.
Just because Ken Levine didn't want it to be doesn't mean that it wasn't going to be.
Yeah, I just remember there's like an audio file or something that you find, and they're talking about, I think it's in BioShock 2, I can't remember, but they're talking about people were going crazy because they couldn't get any exposure to the sun. Like, they were starting to go nuts because they couldn't get that. And so apparently that kind of like raised people's morals. And so I just think, like, man, like, I didn't think about that. Maybe, maybe I need to get more sun. Maybe that's a problem.
Things I learned from BioShock. I need to go out more.
I'm gonna bring my Xbox outside.
Well, very good. Well, I'm trying to think of one of my favorite books that features an alternate history. Is written by Robert Heinlein, and it actually has 2 titles, and I'm trying to look it up right now. Oh man, I cannot think of it for the life of me. I think it's like 6 Against 6 Million or something like that. But basically, the Russians and most of Asia allies against Europe and America, and a group of scientists and a few military men basically stage a resistance from a mountain and retake over the United States. And if I could, for the life of me, think of the title, I would totally recommend this. It's not a very long read, and Robert Heinlein is probably my favorite science fiction author. Of course, he also authored Stranger in a Strange Land and Starship Troopers, which are very well, Starship Troopers probably more mainline, I suppose, but both of those are very highly praised works. So, are you familiar with Robert Heinlein? I'm sure.
Stranger in Strange Land was a great book. So yeah.
Jeff, you're shaking your head. Have you?
No, I haven't read his stuff, but I mean, it sounds awesome.
Well, it is indeed awesome. Well, unfortunately, you're not giving me any time to look for this title, and I can't find it right now. So I'm going to have to give up my search, and perhaps I'll be able to tweet it out at a later date.
Well, maybe you can go and create an alternate history where you do remember it. And
I should. What we'll do right now is we will cleave the podcast in half and insert me telling you about this book. And it will be wonderful. So you should totally.
Should we prepare some fake reactions to it right now? Like, oh my gosh, that's amazing!
I think you should. So, okay, guess what? We don't even have to. All right, I'm talking about none other than 1949's The Sixth Column. It does have another title. I'm not going to go in and read that, but there it is. 6 Against 6 Million for Freedom. I lied. There's an alternate history. So, anyways, yes, definitely check out the 6th column by Robert Heinlein. It's a short read, but I think it's just as the way that it was written. I feel like it's just as relevant today as it was in 1949. So that is our discussion on alternate histories. Does anyone have anything to add? If not, you'll have to time travel and create an alternate history to add it. So I'm giving you the out, saving you the blood, sweat, and tears that you pour into that device.
I had one. I can't remember it.
I would
it's
say
probably
Assassin's
that glowy
Creed.
headset that you're wearing is sucking it from your brain.
It is. Yep.
I would say Assassin's Creed, but I don't even know where to begin. Except,
yeah.
That isn't really an alternate history. That's just fictional fantasy.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's historical fiction. I don't think they've played the time travel thing really that much, right?
Well, no, I mean, there's not a whole lot of time traveling
It's
even,
not
right?
time travel.
But
Yeah,
you are occupying the virtual skin of your ancestors, right? That did
right,
live
fictional
in that
history.
time. Right.
Yeah,
No time
see,
travel.
Ian, I think it's very important, and since you made the mention of it, just would you mind giving a brief explanation of what you mean by that, what the difference is? Because there
I
was
am
somebody
actually confused about that.
Well, there was a Twitter conversation. I did see some fairly, at least visibly public individuals that were saying Assassin's Creed is an alternate history, and I disagree with it, and for the very reason that Ian just brought up.
Well, so my opinion, and I don't know what Wikipedia or dictionary.com says, but my opinion is time travel is a genre where you get into some sort of machine or somehow end up in the past, and you yourself are doing things in the past that affect the future. In Assassin's Creed, the exact opposite is true. You are actually experiencing the past, but if you do anything that's significantly different from what the timeline is already, the game actually punishes you. Like if you kill someone who's not supposed to be killed, like an innocent, what happens? In the first game, you actually lose like some of your DNA, like health or whatever, and the game actually punishes you. And even now, if you go and play, I'm sure they did it even in Black Flag. If you kill a normal, neutral, non-bad person, they will tell you, "Hey, he didn't do that in real life. You shouldn't do that again." So,
but he did run on the rooftops for 6 hours and nothing else.
6 hours, man, you play it fast. So the reality is that that's how it's different. In my opinion, it's just historical fiction where you get to relive history in a fictional type of way, right? But it's not really, you can't affect the present. And the only, the premise of the game is that you're going back into the past, basically, reliving. I mean, imagine if you're just opening up a history book and reliving it as a cartoon. Like, this is effectively the same thing, to learn things that happened in the past so you can affect time now. That's not the same. So in my opinion, they're two very different ideas. But it's cool, but it's different.
He drops the mic.
Boom.
Pull the earbud out.
No,
Is he right or wrong?
They're all amazed by my speech that you all agree.
Well, I know that he touched on time travel as an instance of creating an alternate history.
Right.
But for example,
because you can
I
create
don't think
paradoxes with time travel, right? You can't do that with Assassin's Creed.
You're right. I don't think you are time traveling at all. I think you're remembering, as it were. But right. Through DNA. The problem is, Jeff, you hit the nail on the head. Nobody can explain Assassin's Creed, and that's a problem. But if we're looking at it at its base form as just a linear, which it's very not, storyline, I would not consider it. First of all, it's not time traveling, and I'm not sure how much I'd even consider it an alternate history, given the fact that. Well, I don't know. I'm stepping on some pretty risky territory by saying this, but
as far as I know, no one mentioned that that when the British were invading, there was this dude who was like running a lot of battles. He helped to inform everyone the British was coming. Like, as far as I know, there were only certain set people that we all know about that were in those events.
Yeah.
So
and not some magically cloaked dude who could like run around and kill random people and no one would care.
So you mentioned something that always gets me.
That's the fictional part, by the way, just so we're clear.
We'll just
No, guys, he killed everyone that wrote down his name, okay, and then erased it.
I love discussions like this because inevitably something always comes up from history that I can kind of quasi critique and then kind of chuckle to myself and feel self-satisfaction at my degree. But you said something, you talked about there wasn't some character who was helping all the colonists and riding through towns and telling them that the British were coming. So historically, who is labeled as being the guy that rode through town telling everyone the British are coming? Paul. Does Paul have a last name? Doesn't matter. Paul Revere. Revereware, the guy that made the silverware. So, anyways, why? Now, everyone was told this in school. Everyone was told that the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere featured him running through towns on a horseback, riding through towns on horseback, saying the British are coming. Now, let me ask you, why would he have not said that?
Why would he have not said that?
Correct.
If he was mute.
Or if there was an assassin on his back who was about to kill him.
Technically, at that time, he was British. Everybody in the colonies was a British citizen. So the British are coming didn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, unfortunately, there's not really any evidence to say what he would have said or what he did say.
Right.
But the British are coming doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Huh.
So anyways.
So this is the basis of your argument that maybe Assassin's Creed's telling the truth.
No, this is the basis of my argument that our public school system.
No, this has
needs a major
nothing
overhaul.
to do with anything. This is just Kenny trying to feel good about his degree, like he prefaced.
I think so.
Well, Grant, here's your open mic. I'm passing my non-glowy mic to you. Say something to make us feel good about your degree.
No, all I was saying was that you prefaced it by saying I'm trying to feel good about my degree.
I'm validating my very
Yeah.
costly education right there. So maybe that's my final thought. So we've exhausted the topic. We've exhausted the topic. We've exhausted my validation of my degree, and quite honestly, that little glowing blue light on Grant's mic is also exhausting. So I'd like to move into the final part of our podcast and discuss our final thoughts. So this is where we get a chance to tell you what we're thinking, whether it's related to video games or not related to video games or whatever. And we keep it short, we keep it sweet, and I'll start with Jeff. I'll let Jeff go first.
Yeah, so we kind of hit on this earlier. Ian was talking about it, but I'm really excited for Mario Kart to come out next week. So excited, in fact, that I'm throwing a Mario Kart party. I was wondering,
That's amazing.
Have y'all ever thrown like a launch party for a video game?
Jeff, is Nintendo paying you?
No.
No?
I'm technically paying them to throw the party.
They don't
right?
have money to pay him.
And you want to know why that is? Show of hands, who's purchased a Wii U?
In this history, the real one.
Yeah, not an alternate history.
Okay.
That was the other thing about Wolfenstein: The New Order is every house
There's
has
a Wii U.
U.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that figures.
Back to Jeff's Wii U
Wait,
Mario
wait,
Kart
wait,
8 party.
wait. And you wonder why you're the anti-Nintendo guy? You just said Nazis put Wii U's in everyone's house.
Well, technically it's a VU.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
This is descended to madness.
Well, I mean, basically, I don't really have too much more to add to that, but
So what's going to
really
be?
excited.
Are you going to be playing music at this party that's like from the games, and are people eating out of turtle shells? Like how
Are you
far
gonna
are you
have
going
chips
here?
and guac?
That
Yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah,
You have
we're
chips
gonna
and
have
guac.
we're gonna have pizza. We're gonna have wings.
Pizza's
we're
not
gonna
in the movie, not in the game.
Not the movie.
But pizza is pretty slippery, Ian. I mean, if you put a pizza on a floor and you stepped on it, you'd probably slip and fall.
I am questioning Jeff's dedication to this game.
Oh, very dedicated. Very dedicated.
So you're going to be serving bananas?
Improve your snacks.
Although I'm not sure about the mushroom situation. I don't know.
Bananas?
I don't know if it's going to be one of those parties.
You can have pizzas with mushrooms on them. That's safe.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. This party's getting better. Besides
If
Nazi
Nintendo
alternate
is
history.
paying you, you have to give us a cut now.
Okay. I'll send you a pizza slice.
Okay. So I can trip on it and die.
Well,
And don't send it to that Joe guy. He's made enough money off this gig already. Time for us little guys to make some money. For when Nintendo writes you a check and stuff. All right. So Jeff, are you gonna be sending out an invite to this party on Twitter just in case some rando wants to stop by your house and eat your pizza?
I've
that.
invited a select number of people, and just basically people that I know like the game, and
won't come into your house and kill you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
all keys to a good party.
although, but I want to at least say this, and that is that what I am really excited about is that this Mario Kart seems like it's a lot more competitive. I just remember in the last one for the Wii, I just remember if you could just hang back in 7th or 8th place, you would get a really good item, and if you could just wait till the last lap, you could just boost to the very end.
That's been true of every version of the game ever.
Yeah. I felt I don't know, maybe for me it was just the idea that it was online, and I don't know, anytime that you have an online experience and you can kind of tweak it to kind of benefit yourself, it kind of frustrates me. But I'm really excited how they're making it more randomized this time, and so at least that's what I'm hearing. In the reviews, that's what I'm hearing. So hopefully that's true when I actually play it next Friday. But we'll see.
Very good. Well, after a year, it's about time Nintendo got competitive. So, Grant, what's your final thought?
Kenny. Grant, it's you.
No, I was waiting
Grant,
for that whole thing to end before I even, speak. October 7th, 2014 is going to be the best day of this year. It's going to be fantastic. Dragon Age Inquisition and Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor come out, and I could not be more happy. I mean, I'm kind of sad that they come on the same day because I'm not going to have time to play both of them. Although I have talked to Victoria already, I'm like, if I have a vacation day, I might use it. No, but I can't wait. I don't know if you guys seen much on Shadow of Mordor, but it's like Arkham, Batman Arkham series style combat, but with Lord of the Rings lore, and I can't wait. Their whole nemesis system, with the enemies knowing who you are and holding grudges against you, it's gonna be awesome.
It seems like every time they release another commercial, there's something that's even better. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I can't wait.
Definitely curious to see how that one plays out. I think that'll definitely be a wait and see title for me.
Good for you.
But Grant, you can come on and tell us all about it, and maybe I won't have to wait and see. Maybe you'll just convince me to come by.
I will. I will convince just you. If I can just convince you, I'll be happy.
That's your goal in life. That's an admirable goal. Now, you did mention, I wasn't listening to a word you said, that Dragon Age also releases on that day, correct?
It does.
See, and that's going to be a huge time sink for me. If it's anything like Dragon Age Origins, of course.
Right.
And by Dragon Age Origins, I mean reliving my childhood of playing Baldur's Gate. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But the Shadows of Mordor does have me intrigued, so I'll definitely check that out. So Ian,
yes,
final thoughts.
So I found out that there is a collector's edition of Homeworld coming out. Did you guys hear about this?
Nope.
Do you even know what Homeworld is? No? Yes? Maybe?
Let's say no for the sake of
All right.
the listeners.
Sure. So Homeworld is the game of the year back in 1999, I think. It was this 3D real-time strategy game that's set in space. And what happens is that basically you're this. I'm not giving anything away, really. You're this race of aliens who have been like thrown to this world that has no resources or anything, and you find out that generations ago you were actually leaving the galaxy, and then you lost a war, and so you create this ship, and you decide to go back to your homeworld, which is where the name comes from, and it was by far one of my favorite games ever playing. Like, I really enjoy playing that game, and part of it was it had a great story. Part of it was that the gameplay was actually really interesting, and it ratcheted up over time, and it was really well done. And then Homeworld 2 was also really good. So now they're remastering the two of them, and there's a thing on Amazon for, it's like $100, which is a little much to me, but whatever, where they're going to remaster them for the new devices and everything, and they're going to add, update the graphics and everything. So that's really cool. There was an Indiegogo campaign, I think, to get a Homeworld 3 done back when THQ was going under, and THQ owned the rights, and so they were going to try and buy it from THQ, but they lost. But I'm really curious to see whether or not there seems to be, for some reason, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's this trend of these older games popping up, like The Seventh Guest. There's now a sequel that's apparently in talks. The people who made Myst made a game called Abduction that they're coming out with. Like, there's a lot of these, like, these ghosts of computer gaming past.
Don't forget about Wasteland 2 coming
there you go.
In August.
Yeah, so you've got all these, I mean, we're talking decade and a half, 2-decade-old games now that are starting to show up. It's rather cool because, for those like me who grew up with these games and really enjoyed them, I'm really curious to see how it goes. There are a couple I still would like to see happen, like, what was it there? There was talking about time travel. There was a series of 3 of them. It was what was it? It's something in time or whatever.
Do we need to split the podcast again?
Yeah, you do need to split the podcast. I'm going to forget it.
Okay.
Anyway, it was really cool because you went back in time and you basically had to find all these clues, and then you went forward. Oh, I'm never going to remember it now. But anyway, and so it's really cool just to see these old games coming back, and
yeah,
I'm really happy about it. To me as a nerd, it's fulfilling.
Well, I don't know too much about Homeworld, although I did just check out the remastered collector's edition on Amazon for that $99 price point, which is pretty hefty. But that box is pretty sleek, and it comes with a really
apparently you get a
statue.
When you get a statue that lights up through a USB connector, which I am not one personally for all the plastic that they sell, and I don't really keep a lot of these figurines or anything like that. But it's cool. I mean, for those who really like the game, I guess light up statue.
Well, I tell you what, when you pick that up, you send that my way, and I'll keep it, and that'll be cool. Now that I've got a man cave in my basement, I'm able to pretty much put up whatever I want. So, I mean, it just kind of works out.
I think Kenny begs for something every podcast. He's like, hey, when you do that, send it to me.
Yeah, I don't even hide the fact I work nonprofit. That's how I survived, Grant. I begged when I worked at GameStop, too. So, that being said, I don't know anything about Homeworld, but I'm actually changing my final thought to bounce off what Ian just said. So you just said the guys that made Myst, so the Myst series, Riven, Cyan Worlds was their studio. They're making another game?
Yes, they're making a game called Abduction, I think.
Ooh, I'm very interested in that.
Yeah,
I remember Myst very fondly.
The Kickstarter thing, I think, is over now, but yes, they're doing it.
Well, piss on them. I'll buy it when it's out. But, yeah, I remember Myst, and actually I'm looking at images now, and Myst is rough right now. Myst looks very cartoony. Riven was a beautiful game. Where I stopped, I own the 2. I own 3 and 4, but where I started to lose interest was 3 and 4, and mostly because they did away with the live-action cutscenes.
Right.
Where the actors would walk onto the computer-generated surroundings, and they'd all be terribly overacting, and it was just so great.
Don't you miss those days? Now games want to be movies, and like you have serious actors doing. I miss the days when it was overacting and hilarious.
Wing Commander.
Wing Commander. Oh my God.
with
Mark
Luke
Hamill.
Skywalker. What's his name? Mark Hamill. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, oh my gosh, like I played that game for the cutscenes. I mean, like the space combat was cool, but like I wanted to watch more because it was just sometimes it was like a train wreck. You just can't look away. But
Well, I just remember the name of the game I was trying to bring up, the Journeyman series. So go YouTube Journeyman 3 intro, and you will see some fantastic bad hacking there. Because oh my God.
All right. Well, that about wraps up episode 137 of the Geeks with Wives podcast, where we discuss how alternate histories are very fun, and in some real way, I think Ian and I both wish we lived in an alternate history where there were still live action cutscenes in our games. I know that it would definitely bring a lot more quality to Wolfenstein: The New Order, that's for sure. But I'm not sure how they do it. So anyways, that's our show, and I'm Kenny Newville. You can find me on Twitter at Ken Newville. You can find Geeks with Wives on Twitter at Geeks with Wives, and you can find Grant at
Grant It Is.
And you can find Ian at
Ian Sure.
And you can find Jeff at
Gentle Jeffrey.
So, if you still want more of us, head to Twitter, because we're out.